In this video, we go to war. How's it going on, guys and girls? Welcome back to Blightlord Painting. My name is Graham. Welcome to the channel. In this video, we're painting. Barry, mate, what are you doing here?
Alright, Graham, I have a challenge for you. I see you got some Blightlord Terminators.
Yeah, I do, bro. But you said challenge? Right, I'll bite. What you got in mind?
Let's do a head-to-head challenge. We both paint a 5-man squad of Death Guard to the best of our ability. But there's a catch. You only have 12 hours to complete. And the viewers decide who's the best.
Oh, you're on. Let's go.
Sweet.
So I'm going to be painting these 5 Blightlord Terminators, and I'm super excited to paint these guys. It's going to be awesome. But before we get to painting, we have some cleanup to do. So that is mold lines, any connection points or anything like that. So I'll just go around all the parts for the miniatures and clean up all the parts that need a little bit of attention. For this, I primarily use a Citadel mold scraper, but some places I can't quite get that in because it is quite thick and chunky. So for that, I do use the back of an X-Acto knife. And I've got a little nail filing sponge, which I just help to smooth off any areas. This bit can be quite laborious, but in my mind, it needs to be done. It is an important step, because if you don't, when you get to the painting, those mold lines really stick out like a sore thumb. So my initial thought was black primer, white zenithal highlight, just to try and speed up that base coating process. I've only got 12 hours to do this. So I took a white paint and just did a zenithal highlight from directly above the miniatures. So for the first green I use is War Flesh. This is going to be the darkest green I use. And you're only really going to see that in the deepest shadows and the recesses. As soon as I start painting this colour, I realised that my zenithal highlight was going to be a bit of a waste of time. Because I'm going to be doing so many layers of paint, the zenithal highlight doesn't shine through. And I'm creating basically that zenithal highlight with vibrant yellows and greens as I'm getting lighter for that kind of acid green glow. The next green I use is going to be War Boss green. Now this is going to be the main colour of our armour. This is where the vibrant green starts off. You're only going to see that darker green in the recesses and the shadows. So I'm not completely covering up that green that we did first of all. I'm only really doing it directly above down to about a 40 to 50 degree angle. This just helps to retain that darker green in the shadows and the recesses. As you can see where you put side by side of one that's had that second green coat against that one that's had that dark green base colour. So our final colour for our base is a vibrant yellow. In this case I'm using a Flash Gits yellow from TW. Now I mix that in with the War Boss green to get that really vibrant tone. And from here on in, all I'm doing is adding a little bit more of that yellow to my green mix in my airbrush. Remembering to paint smaller and smaller sections and not covering up the work that I've already done. As you can see, adding that yellow really makes that green pop. And for any highlights, I just keep adding that yellow. Because for my highlights I'm adding yellow and not white, I'm keeping that saturation, I'm keeping that vivid tone in my painting. This is the best way not to get a pastel or muted colour when you want something vibrant, and can be applied to any colour. If you're using blues, maybe use a purple underneath and then work your way up to a blue. Or if you're using reds, start with a dark red and start adding a little bit of yellow through orange up to yellow, make it more fiery, more vibrant. Once that armor color is done, next is to start blocking in those other colors. There's not really much to say about blocking in these next colors. I'm using a purple for any tentacles and flesh. I'm using a bronze color for any of the metallic armor trims. I'm painting the weapons silver and the majority of the cloth khaki bone-ish color. The bone and teeth being an off-white. I noticed on some of the miniatures that they do have these little maggots all over them, so what I did is base coat them white, and then on the wash stage the wash would pick out all the details by settling in the recesses. Really easy and dead quick. And that's really about it. Just go around the miniatures making sure I've got good coverage on each colour. The one thing I will say about the base coats is that I think I sank in a lot more time than I needed to, painting all the fiddly bits and making sure everything was at full opacity. I've painted a fair few Death Guard miniatures since I've been back in the hobby, and the one thing I definitely can say about them is that they do have a lot of details. So if you're picking out a lot of the details like I am now, it's gonna take quite a long time, and it took a lot longer than I anticipated or planned for. All the little skulls, the little grubs on them, all the fleshy bits. But in my mind it's well worth doing this because they are so full of character. So if I burnt a few hours, then I didn't really need to doing this. Even though it grieves me, there was a part of me that's happy to do that. My Death Guard colour scheme is pretty simplistic when you break it down to its core elements, and all it is essentially purple, green and bronze. Having a simple but defined colour scheme can really help, one, to speed up your painting process, and two, it helps to not overcrowd what's going on the miniature. Sometimes having less is definitely more. For this challenge, because I'm painting these to the best of my ability in the time frame that I've got, I'm not going to be including the bases. I also already have a video on how I do my bases already out. I'll put a link in the description and put it in the cards. Go check it out after this video. So confession time, I have actually lost all of the footage of me doing the washes on the wash stage. I know it's not a major thing, thankfully, but I cannot find the footage of me doing any of the washes anywhere. So here's footage of me doing some more base coats while I'm talking about the washes. Sorry about that. So once all the base coats were done, I now wanted to wash all the armour. And what I used for this is just Agrax Earthshade, nice and easy. I water it down 50-50 and then just slap it on the whole miniature. The reason why I water it down is just in case it does pull in any awkward areas, it's not too obvious. But before it's dry, I go around with a dry brush and just soak up any of the places it's pulling that I don't really want it to pull. Once that's dry, I do it again in places that I want to be darker. Nice and simple. Now that the washes were done, it's time to start getting some detail on these miniatures. I'm not going to be doing anything too over the top. So for the cloth, I just layer up some thinned bone colour. And as these guys are Death Guard, I did it quite sloppily. One, because it's quicker, and two, because it looks more like a worn, rough material, which fits for the Death Guard aesthetic. Personally, if I had more time, I would add more hatchings like my other material that I've done before. But as I've got a time frame, that's a no-go today. So with the brass, all I do is highlight it with a gold, just so it's not too shiny, but it does have a little bit of highlight. For any of the weapons on the blades, I do add a little bit of Typhus Corrosion for a little bit more texture and a little bit more of a worn, rusty material. I also do this for any of the steel parts that are showing on gun barrels, all the silver on them on working parts, just to give it a bit more of that texture. Now, with the skin tone, I didn't want it to be completely flat. I wanted it to simulate some of those highlights I was going to try and do with that zenithal highlight in the first priming stages. So I get on my wet palette the purple, a red and a white, start applying some thin layers, getting lighter and lighter, all on the top surfaces of the fleshy bits. If I had the time, I could have gone lighter and maybe a little bit more pink in places, blending transitions and things like that, but as we were on a time frame, I just stuck to something a little bit more simple. While painting all of these little bits and bobs and all the details, I found it a lot easier to paint with the arms off, and I'm really glad I decided to magnetize these guys, just because it's a lot easier to paint under the armpits and all in the little crevices you wouldn't be able to get to if they were fully assembled. For any of the bones of the horns, I just did a simple highlight on them, nothing special, really rough and ready. Another massive time sink was all the highlighting, but I really wanted to get some of this done. And for my Death Guard, the highlighting stage is exactly the same as when I was doing my base coats for the armour. All I'm doing is taking that War Boss green and adding more and more of the flash kits yellow, the lighter I want the colour. As I said earlier, this is great for keeping that saturation and keeping that really vibrant tone. So I'll go around the whole mini and just outline any of the panels of the armour, outline any of the pock marks or the damage to the armour that's all sculpted in. If there's any bits, any parts of the armour that I want the highlights to be even brighter, I just add a little bit more yellow. While doing this, I do add a couple of little micro scratches, more around the legs than anywhere else, just for a little bit more of a weathering. Adding those highlights really does help to make this miniature look finished, even though there's so much more I could do to it. For the eye lenses in the helmet, I just paint them red for the base coat, a little bit more of an orangey red, and then put a line of yellow. Really nice and simple, really nice and quick. And with the red cape, I did exactly the same thing. Close up, do they look good? In my personal opinion, no. But speed painting or painting on a time limit is all about cutting corners where you need to, and you're not going to notice tiny little eye lenses when they're on the table. This is where I decided to save some time to then reinvest that time into places you're really going to notice, like the armor panels and like the edge highlighting. With the tentacles and the skin, I didn't want to spend ages doing them, but I did want them to have a little bit of character. So I went around and highlighted just the tops of the purple. The last part to do on these guys was the weathering. The Death Guard, they need to be dirty.
Nurgle would not be pleased if they were clean.
I decided early on the two main ways of weathering these guys I was going to do was one with really quick and easy rust technique and two with really quick and easy verdigris technique, both of which were pretty much straight out of the pot. I wanted to fill all of the pot marks and scratches and holes in the armor with something that will contrast well with the green, and I had the perfect thing for it. And GW's RZA Rust. RZA Rust is a technical paint. It's a dry brush paint, so it's really thick. But my favorite way of using it is to get it on your palette and water it down to a glaze consistency, and then basically wash that RZA Rust right into all the crevices, into gaps, holes, scrapes, and just let it settle like a wash. And the thing with RZA Rust is it dries really matte. So you can coat something in it, and while it's wet it'll look completely ruined and overdone, but once it's dry it'll mute right down and give you a really nice rusty quick effect. So I went round all of the Terminators and just picked out places where I'd want rust and gave each of those spots a really good splotch. Once they were dry I did the exact same thing with the verdigris. Now, verdigris is a weird one. It's basically an oxidization of certain metals, which turns it kind of this greeny aqua blue color. The only metal that really springs to my mind is copper that you really see it on. Maybe brass? I'm not 100% sure about brass, but definitely copper. And because it is that aqua blue, it really contrasts well with the purple and green. So I went round all of the brassy, coppery areas, and with a thinned down mix of GW's Nihilakh Oxide, I splodged that round the miniature in places where I think it would look good, but only on the coppery, brassy parts. Last but not least, I mixed up a dark grey and highlighted the smoke on the Flail of Corruption. Then added a little bit more white for a little bit more of a highlight, and then went round and roughly highlighted all the smoke. Once that was finished, I stuck them to the bases and the Blightlord Terminators were done. So there you have it guys, what do you think of my Blightlord Terminators? Let me know in the comments down below. Personally, I think I can do a lot better with more time, and I think I will go back and revisit these guys just to touch them up, to bring them up to the same level as the rest of my army. Chances are if you look at them on the tabletop with the rest of my army, you wouldn't be able to tell a difference. But it's one of those little things that I am a little bit of a perfectionist about. But in relation to the time I did them in, I was happy with the result. Have that, Barry. What do you think?
Not bad, but it's not up to me and you. It's up to the guys and girls at home.
That is right, you guys. This video is just one of two with a collaboration from Barry from Underdog Painting. And we want you guys and girls to vote on whose Death Guard is your favourite. So go check out his Death Guard video. The link is in the cards for a playlist I've put together with both these videos so you can find it. Like and comment on the videos whose Death Guard you like the best. And while you're over there at Underdog Painting, consider subscribing to his channel. He does regular painting videos and tricks and tips on how you guys can up your painting game. So that's enough from me for another video. If you like what I'm doing here at Blightlord Painting and want to support the channel, the best way to do it is to become a patron on Patreon. So go check out Blightlord on Patreon, link down below. But alas, that is it from me at Blightlord Painting. I hope you've all enjoyed the video and thanks for sticking around to the end. Like and subscribe if you haven't. Smash that bell icon so you don't miss anything Blightlord, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace! I'm filming this time because I've recorded this whole entire video and I've forgotten to blink and press the record button on the camera. Take 2.
Fucking hell. Oh my god, that's mint.